Hello, welcome back to another episode of It's Software Shooters. We're going to take a look at the next episode of Doom. Now, the reason why we're doing another episode of Doom is because there's just too much to talk about when it comes to this game. And I've got a whole bunch of notes here that I barely scratched in the first part, probably because I was a lot. And that's when I realized I probably should use notes more often. Anyway, so this game runs at 35 frames per second instead of, full 60 frames a second. And that's because the average monitor refresh rate or monitor frame rate per second is 70 frames per second. But Carmack, the programmer of the Doom engine, was worried that that people would not be able to play this game at a decent frame rate. And the problem with computers is that you don't want frame rates to fluctuate too much, or else it's gonna affect the controls. So he capped the frame rate to 35 frames a second, which is adequate. Let's be honest, because most modern games today are either at 60 frames a second or 30 frames a second. So that's a little bit better than what we're used to even today. But anyway, so Doom. So I was talking about Doom 95 earlier. Doom 95 was actually created by Microsoft in order to get Doom to work. I mean, you could get Doom to work in Windows 95 without any, using mods or anything like that. But Microsoft decided that they want to make a environment, a source port version of Doom that would allow for it to take advantages of the many abilities that Windows 95 has to offer. And one of the nice features that they included in Windows 95, which is admittedly not unique to Windows, but was nice of them to include, was the ability to play this game at higher resolutions. I believe the max resolution is 640 by 480, which back in 1995, that was actually quite good. Most games we were used to, resolutions lower than that. Now, I'm actually not playing this with Doom 95 because it's, kind of difficult to get that to work on Windows 7, but I am running ZDoom, or ZDoom as Americans like to call it. And the reason why I'm using ZDoom is because ZDoom does offer similar features to Doom 95, such as increased resolution, and actually I'm not exactly sure what other features that ZDoom has that is similar to Doom 95, but this is pretty much what Doom 95 would look like. Oh, and as you're probably wondering what I'm doing there, you see that switch up top there? Yeah. Here's another funny thing about this game engine. This is actually not a 3D engine. This is a 2.5D engine. Meaning, and I don't mean 2.5D gameplay like, for instance, Klonoa on the PlayStation is considered to be a 2.5D game. No, you see, that's 2.5D in terms of gameplay, meaning that the environments are full 3D, but the gameplay is very 2D. Well, this is a 2.5D engine, meaning that it doesn't actually render things in 3D. Like, for instance, all of the the characters are just sprites. They're not real 3D characters. All 2D sprites, 2D graphics, all particle effects. Your hand, your gun, everything is 2D except the environments. Although even the environments aren't complete 3D either. First of all, in order to get this game to run fast on 486 computer, Carmack needed to approach developing this engine the same way that he approached Wolfenstein 3D. Now, you might have noticed Wolfenstein 3D had some disadvantages. For an example, Wolfenstein 3D can only do 90-degree walls. It cannot do any curvy walls like you see in Doom, and there's no variation in terrain height or slopes or anything like that. Now, even though Doom is still more advanced than Wolfenstein 3D, it's based on a similar principle of a environment that is very 2D in its structure, but is disguised as something that is 3D, but it really isn't true 3D. In other words, Doom is able to simulate the X and Y axis quite well, but the Z axis, on the other hand, is an illusion. It's not really true 3D. Notice how there aren't any slopes or any kind of crazy elaborate terrain. Everything is, you know, the only curvature you see is along the walls, but the floors and ceilings are always flat. And that's because the floors and ceilings aren't actually really in 3D. It's very complicated, but instead I would recommend that you guys go check out you know, like the Doom Wiki or Wikipedia on the id Tech 1 engine, aka the Doom engine. And it's actually a very interesting read. It's quite fascinating to see how Carmack was able to create a sort of 3D environment without requiring computers that could handle full 3D. And that is the magic of id Software, their ability to make these incredibly impressive and yet extremely efficient game engines. You're probably wondering what I'm trying to do here. I'm waiting for that fireball to hit that monster so that he would start attacking those guys that shot him, but he decided to keep attacking me. Yes, there is a lot of infighting between monsters, especially monsters of different species. If you can get them to fight each other, it gives you the upper hand. Except, you know, zombies, they fight each other. It doesn't matter if they're the same, I guess you could say, species, because zombies are corrupted human soldiers. I probably should explain the story here. It's pretty basic stuff. But basically, you are on well, in the first episode of Doom, which is the previous part that we took a look at. That took place on the moon of Phobos, which is one of the moons of Mars. And Phobos had a you know, whole bunch of I guess you could say labs and, you know, base like military bases and stuff like that. All of a sudden, Phobos was attacked by all of these creatures. And it turns out that, you know, people speculate that these creatures are from hell or something like that. Like, these are demons and monsters. Very, very Dungeons and Dragons inspired. In fact, that monster that we killed back there, that big monster with the horns, very, very Dungeons and Dragons inspired. And I guess you could say this is Dungeons and Dragons in the future. A modern marine that is up against the horde of hell, basically. Anyways, so that's the plot. But in episode 2, which is this episode that we're playing right now, this takes place on Deimos, the other moon of Mars. And there's only 2 moons of Mars. Alright, now this is the plasma gun. I'm sure you've already seen it at work. I must tell you something really funny here. Do you know how they did the graphics or the guns and stuff like that? Obviously, the monsters were all animated and drawn. Some of them were actually done using models and were used stop motion to add movement to those characters. But when it came to the guns, the guys at id Software went to Toys R Us and they bought a whole bunch of toy guns. So what you're actually looking at is a whole bunch of toy guns. Even the plasma rifle is a toy gun. In fact, somebody online has uploaded a picture of that exact toy gun, and it looks exactly like the one in Doom. So I just thought that was actually kind of funny. In fact, I think most of the weapons are toys. Some of them might be drawn, I'm not too sure. But so far I know the chain gun is a toy, the shotgun is a toy, and the BFG might be a modified toy based on the same image used for the plasma rifle, which is that gun that we picked up recently. So it's actually quite funny. I must also mention about Doom 95. Doom 95 was actually started, or it was a project started by a certain individual that some of you might be familiar with, Gabe Newell. Yes, the founder of Valve, you know, used to work at Microsoft back in the mid-90s, and perhaps for quite a long time. And he started the Doom 95 project. I'm not actually sure if he finished the project or if he left before it was even completed, because I know it was around the mid-90s that he left Microsoft to start up Valve. But this wouldn't be the first time that Gabe Newell would be involved with id Tech. First of all, a lot of us know that the first Half-Life, which is Valve's first game, uses id Tech 2, a modified version of the id Tech 2 engine, which is what is used to power Quake. Now, I probably should explain myself. id Tech, first of all, id Tech 1, which is the engine used to power Doom, was originally just called the Doom engine. But after a couple of years, Carmack decided to call this engine, to give it a proper name, and he decided to call it id Tech Engine 1, or id Tech 1, the id Tech 1 engine. And then Quake would use the id Tech 2 engine, well, a very early version of the id Tech 2 engine, and Quake 2 would use a more advanced version of the id Tech 2 engine, and Quake 3 would use the id Tech 3, and so on and so forth. We're going to go into more detail when it comes to that in future episodes. But right now, I actually accidentally found the secret level. I knew about this level, but I did not know how to access this level, because the previous level that we were in is very maze-like. Now this leads me into the biggest complaint I have with episode 2 of Doom. The level design just isn't as good as episode 1. And I think I might know why that is the case. John Romero, one of the co-founders of id Software, is, in my opinion, a very talented game developer. And when they were busy developing the early levels of Doom, back in maybe 92 or early 93 or something like that, the levels had sort of a Wolfenstein feel to them, and Romero was not pleased with it, and he tried to show these guys what the engine was capable of doing. You know, like Carmack had spent so much time on this engine, and we're just gonna make it look like Wolfenstein? You know, make it a slightly better looking Wolfenstein? No. Oh, by the way, I get stuck in this level. I don't know where the key is, so I punched in the cheat to get me all the keys, so there you go. I don't know why I'm collecting all these other keys. I should just go through the exit. So that was the secret level. Not as fun as the secret level in episode 1, which we did not see because I decided to skip it just to save time. But yeah, so Romero, when he created a demo level that had lots of varying heights and, you know, large rooms and very steep stairs and stuff like that, just to show off the capabilities of the Doom engine. As a result, he decided that he would go to as a result, he decided to pretty much make all of the episode 1 levels, which is why I like episode 1 levels so much, because the levels are so intricate, but they're not convoluted. Like, you can't really get lost in them very easily. But in episode 2, they had a few other guys make these levels. Romero might have done 1 or 2 of them, but most of them were done by other people. And I have to say, I don't think they're nearly as good as Romero in terms of level design. As you can plainly see here, I'm already like I wouldn't say lost. I know how to get back, but I cannot remember where the red key is. So here I am trying to look for it. Oh yeah, by the way, there is a special power-up that you can pick up that makes your fists really powerful. And so those zombies will explode as soon as you punch them. Very useful. These skulls remind me of a book that I had. I can't remember what the name of the book was. I need to look it up and maybe try and figure out exactly what it is. But they remind me of a book that I once read, and a part of me wonders if it's the guys at id Software also had access to the same book. It wasn't actually a novel. It was a picture adventure book. It was like a very dark fantasy adventure book that we had for quite a few years. I don't know what happened to it, but anyways, I wouldn't be surprised if id Software used it as inspiration for many of the monsters. Now the Caco Demon, if you guys have taken a look at the link in the previous episode, you'll totally see that there is no difference between the Dungeons and Dragons monster when compared to the Caco Demon. Obviously the Caco Demon doesn't have a body, it's only a head, but that's the only thing they changed, literally. And I mean, this has to be seen to be believed. Yes, I am taking a really long time navigating the place. I just have no idea where that key is. So I decided to just carry on with the level, and hopefully I'll be able to head back and find the key, which I do eventually, but it is a huge waste of time. Lots of narrow corridors. These are really annoying. Romero was never a fan of these kind of designs, and I don't know. I just really think that episode 1 is the best episode in Doom 1. Fortunately, the level design in general does improve with Doom 2, but episode 2, episode 3 in Doom 1 are just not that great. Not to say that all the levels are bad, but anyways. I'm just looking at what else I can... Oh yes. Alright, that's a fake exit, by the way. And I remembered that. I was like, oh, okay, that's a fake exit. So if I find the yellow key, I must not go there. Because as soon as you open that door, a whole bunch of monsters attack you. So it's like an ambush. A big ambush. Ambushes is something that they do very often in Doom. Anyway, so I just want to talk about when id Software first released the original shareware version of this game, which was, you know, it wasn't exactly quite done, you know, the game. Like, they still wanted to tweak it here and there. So the very first version, or the shareware version of Doom, which is the one that we played in the previous episode, was listed as version 0.99. So it's very close to the final version, but with some slight differences. But this one we're playing here isn't the original 1.0 release of Doom. This is actually a later version. I'm not exactly what version it is, but it's called Ultimate Doom, and they've added a 4th episode to this game. But the 4th episode is more like an expansion or DLC for the game. It's not really, it doesn't really add anything to the experience. So we're only going to take a look at, you know, the original 3 episodes, and we're just going to skip the 4th episode. Now here I am. I've got some what do you call it? Binoculars that help me see in the dark, so everything's nice and light now. So now I can see where I'm going, and I'm still struggling. There it is. Anyways, and of course they ambush me again every time I make progress. Anyways, but I decided, let's just forget about them. Let's just get out of this place. I'm sick of it. Man, they really love using those demons. Apparently people have dubbed that demon as Pinky because he's pink. Yeah, that Pinky is a very common enemy. But anyways, I just want to talk about the multiplayer aspect of this game. there was both deathmatch and co-op. And guess what? The term deathmatch was actually, I guess you could say, created by Romero. Romero created the term deathmatch. Like I said, Doom set the standard for first-person shooters in so many ways. And just in case you're wondering what's going on here, I'm actually invincible. I picked up an invincible orb that will, you know, so that's really nifty. Also, I just noticed there's a secret back here. Or I remember there being a secret, but I wasn't sure where it was, and here it is. So it actually isn't a door. And there's a rocket launcher to pick up, and of course the teleporter, but unfortunately I don't have the key to the teleporter, so yeah, basically I decided, you know what, let's just finish this stage. And by the way, I'm actually running out of time, so I'm gonna have to cut this short by cheating a little bit. So ZDoom has the ability to jump. And oh, I missed, but that's okay. So I can jump out, and it's a really nice feature that ZDoom would offer, the ability to jump. But anyways, so that's that for part 2, or not part 2, but the second episode of Doom. And we're going to take a look at the final episode of Doom in the next part.